Coming to you from 4,200 feet in the hills of Oregon, it is the voice of Chi-Town, the reddest beard in the high desert, your host of the MOA Broadcast, Sam Wilson. All right, folks, we got a fantastic show lined up for you today. All kinds of good stuff. Let me go ahead and read. So I mentioned last week that my printer ran out of ink, not the black ink that I needed, but the other color. So I immediately, even though I didn't want to, I immediately ordered more ink from Amazon because I got a Prime membership, for the business side of things. And it was supposed to be there on Monday. I ordered it on Saturday night. It's supposed to arrive on Monday. It is now the following Saturday, Sunday, and it still has not arrived. So that forced me to put things on a tablet when I'm used to having hard copy in front of me. So again, please bear with me if running a little bumpy here. Okay, let's go. Episode 29 we're on already. Thanks for all the support, folks. I do appreciate it. We haven't done the email comments in a while. Most of them have been more focused and geared on the knives and stuff as far as the context of the email. So I haven't really put them on here because this show is a little bit more generalized. But feel free. Remember, if you got any questions, comments, or feedback, hit us up at info@gearconvoy.com. We like the good, the bad, and the ugly, folks. So don't hesitate. Now, show highlights. All kinds of interesting stuff today. Man dies after his friend tests his Kevlar helmet with a rifle. I'm not making this stuff up. Robots are now being used to hunt pythons in Florida. A moped maniac is gunned down in New York City. And folks, if you see the interview, the mayor of Chicago, in my opinion, is nearly in tears over an upcoming visit by President Donald Trump. And finally, when hookers and pimps decide to work together, Florida edition. It's going to be a wild ride. So make sure you stick around. We got a great show lined out for you today. Couple of things I got. So I don't know if I mentioned this on the air or not recently, but I've talked about Dark Knight and Mr. Floofer, the cats that would come around and hang outside the house and the shop. So started feeding them a while back. Now, of course, they come regularly. And they're definitely feral cats. They don't want to be touched. They don't want to go inside or anything else. But Dark Knight, because they're all just pitch black, beautiful cats. And anyways, Dark Knight turned out to be a female, and she got pregnant, had a litter of kittens. I'm guessing that Mr. Floofers is the father because those two always run together, and he treats those little kitties like his own. Well, anyway, one of them basically tried to claw his way into the house, so I decided to go ahead and take him up on the offer. And now Cobra is the newest addition here at the Gear Convoy / Wilson Custom Knife Shop. So he is turning out to be quite the little beast. He's already at almost 6 pounds. And it was interesting because I haven't had to litter train a cat in a long time, ever since the last cat, which, passed not too long ago at almost 16 or over 16 years of age. But we had her she was potty trained to use the toilet. So did that not long after I got her. So I had to get a little litter box and all that kind of stuff to get, Cobra geared up and ready to potty train. So whenever I took him in, I had a litter box there the first night. And all I did, and I'm not saying I'm taking credit for this, it was all him, but I put him into the litter box and he rolled around the litter for probably 5 or 6 minutes and just seemed to enjoy it. Probably because he's a street kitty. He's used to being out, on the streets and fields and alleys and stuff. And that was it. I left him. And from that moment on, so far anyway, it's been a couple of weeks now he's been in the house. He used the litter box without any complications so far. So I was really surprised at how easy that was. He was very clearly inclined to just use the litter box with no training at all because I didn't do anything. I was expecting to have to pick up, quite a few messes for the next couple of weeks or whatever. That's it. He rolled around the litter. I left him alone and we're done. So eventually I'll probably try and get him trained to use the toilet like the last cat. And for those of you wondering, no, I am not joking. I need to put a picture up of the last cat would use the toilet for number 1 and number 2. It was actually really cool. There was no smell of a litter box or anything like that. And she was very fastidious about it all. So anyway, that is Cobra. He is, if you don't follow our Patreon, I have, and this is my other quandary I'm in right now. I try and put up the video episode of the MOA broadcast every week, and I'm running a little behind now on our Patreon page. That's for those that pay access for. That's one of the things that they pay like a dollar or a $5 or a $10 monthly donation to or fee to, however you want to look at that, to support the show. And we appreciate that greatly because it takes quite a bit of time to put all this together. So I am a little behind because it takes so much time to stitch together both halves of the show, get the music in there, get everything cleaned up and all this stuff, and then to render it out and then to upload it to Patreon. It takes several hours with the setup I have and where I'm at. So I'm sure someone who really knew what they were doing could do better, but that's where I'm at. So if anybody has any suggestions on how to do that easier, I think instead of doing it in 2 half-hour blocks, I'm just going to go ahead and do it in one full 1 hour block of the whole show. And that way, at least I won't have to go through it twice and do all the editing and everything else. Do it in one shot, then just edit it, set it to render and produce, and just leave it alone for 30, 40, 50 minutes, whatever, and then upload it separately. So anyway, my point was, if you go to Patreon, the Gear Convoy Patreon page, I post regular videos of Cobra and the dog Bacon when we go into town to get supplies and everything. They love tacos, and man, I have not tried. So fried chicken is one of my absolute favorite meals of all time. Last time I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken it's sneaking up on a decade. Because where I lived previously, we had Popeyes and Chick-fil-A. I preferred those to Kentucky Fried Chicken because the last time I went, the chicken tasted horrible. The mashed potatoes and gravy were horrible. The whole experience was disgusting. And I can remember when it was almost to the day because I remember I sold a very particular knife that day, and I remember it very clearly. Well, anyway, a couple of weeks ago, I was in town, and the regular fried chicken place that I take Bacon to get his fried chicken tenders was closed, or they had a huge line or whatever. So I'm like, let's go ahead and try KFC. And man, I don't know if it was just the one location or what. It was delicious. I'm a huge original recipe fan, but I always get like an extra thigh or a breast, an extra crispy to go along with the original recipe box. And man, it was good. The mashed potatoes and gravy were good, not great. And the coleslaw was good, not great. But it was definitely, it was good. It was good stuff for fast food fried chicken. So they were reasonably priced and everything else. So anyway, now Bacon and Cobra are addicted to KFC. When they see me come through the door or, with the fried chicken, the box, they go bonkers. Or if we pull up in the parking lot, if they're with me in the vehicle when we go to town, they know exactly what time it is. So anyway, interesting stuff. All right, we got to get down to our show. We're already burning through some time here. We go first to Texas. All right, I'm gonna try and not laugh. It's not, I guess, really funny. A man lost his life. But guys, when you read these stories, you have to wonder, how much alcohol or drugs was potentially or possibly involved? Or are some of these people in these stories, are they really that stupid that they actually do these things? Here's the headline coming to us from Houston Public Media. Houston area man charged with murder after quote-unquote friends took turns shooting each other, sheriff says. It gets better. Let's jump right in. 2 men in the Houston area took turns shooting each other earlier this month while wearing a ballistics helmet, according to Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, who said the incident led to the death of one of them and murder charges for the other. Sean O'Donnell, 37, was arrested and charged with murder Thursday in the shooting death of Aaron Prout, P-R-O-U-T. Prout, a 34-year-old man from the United Kingdom who resided in Harris County, the sheriff wrote in social media. Prout sustained a gunshot wound to the head on August 17 in the 23700 block of Pennington Hills Drive, according to the sheriff, who said he was transported to a hospital and subsequently died from his injuries. We are sorry to hear that. Hard to believe, quote, so-called friends would take turns shooting at each other wearing a Kevlar helmet inside a house in a residential neighborhood while using a rifle, Gonzalez, the sheriff, wrote in his post. So apparently these two guys were, we're going to go ahead and leave out all the supposition of potential drug, alcohol abuse, or whatever that may or may not have happened. That's a pretty crazy thing to do to me in my mind, but who knows? Apparently these guys are sitting in a home in a residential area, and one of them goes, "Hey, guess what? I got a ballistics helmet." "Oh yeah? You got a Kevlar helmet?" "I sure do, buddy. Why don't you take your rifle and shoot me in the face?" head, whatever, however you want to put it. It sounded a little more comical, the face, but whatever. Here we are. I mean, what's going through your mind when you decide to let somebody aim not even a handgun? Now, it doesn't say what caliber it may have been a smaller caliber rifle. It may not have been an authentic or genuine Kevlar / ballistic helmet. Who knows? There's a million things that could have gone wrong. But why? How do you get to the point where you're like, yeah, bud, go ahead and shoot me in the head with your rifle. Let's see what happens. I mean, what in the world is going on? Gonzalez said deputies with the Harris County Precinct 4 Constable's Office responded to a call that initially was reported as a possible suicide. But things weren't adding up for investigators, he said. O'Donnell, presumably the man who fired the weapon against Prout, lived at the home where the shooting occurred. A murder charge against O'Donnell did not, okay, blah, 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 doesn't matter. However, a man with the same name and address and birthday was arrested 3-4 days later after the shooting and charged with driving while intoxicated, court records show. So I'm sure I may get at least minimum 2 lives that are completely ruined by this stupid stunt. So I don't even know what to hope for. There's no real situational awareness tip I can give you guys other than don't let people shoot you in the head with rifles while you're wearing or not wearing a tactical helmet. Man, I mean, I do feel horrible with the whole thing, but what in the world? What are you supposed to do with that information? Okay, speaking of wild and woolly things, let me get a sip here first, folks. Okay, speaking of wild and woolly things, we go to Florida. That's right, folks. The state that never leaves you wanting for crazy news. This isn't particularly crazy. I found this kind of fascinating. So for those that don't know, outside the States, or maybe even here in the States, they have a massive python problem. This is not a joke. This is a legit story. There's a massive python problem in the state of Florida. It goes into it some in the story, but the bottom line is, years ago, a bunch of pythons were apparently just released into the Everglades by people who didn't want them, who had them as pets, possibly because they kept growing larger and it gets more expensive to feed them and so forth, or they escaped. Who knows what? There's all kind of theories and stuff, but the bottom line is, we'll stick to the article here. The Everglades are infested with these pythons. Because they have few natural predators, they grew like a weed, so to speak. I mean, they bred like rabbits, and now they're infested down there. We get into some numbers later on in the story. So the problem is they don't have enough people, and it's hard to pay people to go there and find these pythons. So they can trap them. The trapping is not the hard part, okay? It's the finding them whenever they're ready to be caught, or they're able to be caught, I should say. Okay, so let's jump right in. They look, this comes to us from West Palm Beach, Florida, from NBC. They look, move, and even smell like the kind of furry Everglades marsh rabbit a Burmese python would love to eat. But the bunnies are robots meant to lure the giant snakes out of their hiding spots. It is the latest effort from the South Florida Water Management District to eliminate as many pythons as possible from the Everglades, where they are decimating native species with their voracious appetites. Now get a load of this. In Everglades National Park, officials say the snakes have eliminated 95% of small mammals, as well as thousands of birds. So clearly there's a problem. And this is what happens when you go around and you mess around with nature and habitats and so forth. They're an invasive species, not much to track them down and kill them, and we have a massive problem, no pun intended. So according to Mike Kirkland, the lead invasive animal biologist, he says removing them is fairly simple. It's detection. We're having a really hard time finding them because they're so well camouflaged. So they deployed 120 robot rabbits this summer as an experiment. They had previously tried to use live rabbits as snake lures, but that became too expensive and time-consuming. I can well imagine you have to deal with upkeep and feeding them and all kind of other things. They get sick or other predators get them, whatever. The robot rabbits are simple toy rabbits, but retrofitted to emit heat, a smell, and to make natural movements to appear like any other regular rabbit. They look like a real rabbit, he said. They are solar powered and can be switched on and off remotely. They're placed in small pens. If you see the picture, I'm going to work on trying to get pictures into the video version. But anyway, if you see the picture, they're in like these little cages that are monitored by a video camera, and it sends out a signal when there's a python nearby. So to think that they know they're going to send out their snake wranglers and pick up the pythons, I guess. So pretty interesting. The total cost per robot rabbit, is about $4,000, financed by the Water District. I don't know exactly how the Water District works there. That probably is another fancy way to say state taxes. But whatever, if it helps, I mean, I guess if it's something effective and it does something that it's supposed to and does something good, that's what tax dollars should be used for. So, anyways, they have become a blah blah blah. The pythons, okay, we talked about that. Now, interestingly enough, a female python can lay between 50 and 100 eggs at a time, with a gestation period of 60 to 90 days. That's pretty rapid turnaround overall, and you're looking at a lot of. I mean, you can see how the species exploded. It's not easy to find definite estimates of the number of pythons in Florida, but they recently reported a ballpark number, the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, of tens of thousands, while other official estimates run as high as possibly 300,000 snakes. That's a lot of snakes that don't belong there. So anyway, so far they've removed 23,000 of these snakes since 2000. So interesting. I guess we'll see how that goes. It'd be interesting to get a follow-up on that story and see how effective. They seem pretty confident, but of course they're not going to talk about how negative or bad it is to a newspaper interview that's going to, put the kibosh on the whole thing. All right, folks, we go back to the violent cesspool that is New York City. Moped riding perp shot dead after pulling a gun on NYPD cop during robbery was an illegal immigrant involved in 3 other thefts, from the New York Post. That was when I used to live in New York. That was one of my favorite newspapers to read. And, when you're in New York, I live in almost literally the middle of nowhere now. You have anybody that lives in a large city or even a medium-sized city can tell you there's a whole different hustle and bustle and energy and everything, and you wind up developing all kinds of routines, that revolve around getting to and from your job or wherever you're going, first thing in the morning or afternoon, whatever. And I mean, nothing was better. I had 2 different kinds of bagel orders that I liked, and I was very close to one of the best bagel shops in the city, or at least in Brooklyn, in my opinion. And if I was going to go for something that was more of a treat, then I would get a cinnamon raisin bagel that was either covered in just a massive amount of actual real butter, or slathered in butter and then cream cheese as well. And I mean, these are delicious cinnamon raisin bagels. They were so good. If you haven't had a New York bagel, I mean, I'm to the point now where I don't know that I could try another bagel from most other places. Interestingly enough, there are certain bagels on the West Coast. In fact, there used to be a West Coast bagel place when I was in Portland. I don't recall the name of it, but they served West Coast style bagels. They were a lot lighter. They weren't nearly as doughy. They had a lot more like of an airy taste to them, or a texture, but they were very good. And they were really good for making sandwiches. Now, if you take a New York style bagel and you make a sandwich out of it, it can be kind of heavy, in my opinion, unless you're just eating half of it. They would frequently slice it in half. But those are my 2 bagel orders: the cinnamon raisin, covered in butter, or butter and cream cheese, or if I was really, wanted something a little heartier or different, later in the day maybe, or like a breakfast style thing, I would get an everything bagel with cream cheese and lox on it, and just, load it up. And these places would do that, man. There was no skimping. You go to the right bagel place, they didn't sit there and skim. They knew happy customers would come back every day. They knew lots of their customers. A lot of these shops were small. That's one of the things that people don't really get about New York. If you haven't been there, or you don't know about the city, a lot of it is divided down these little neighborhoods, and then a lot of small shops. There may be, 30 or 40 places in a square mile or 3 that sell the same exact thing, but you go to the one in your neighborhood. And that was a really neat feature of New York City. You would, within your own neighborhood, you would have a place where you go get socks, where, you would go grocery shopping, and where you would get your bagel, where you would get your pizza, where you got your Italian food, where you would, get cannolis, whatever it was. That was a shop right there, your coffee place. And so, they would know your order, and you would get the same thing every day. And the repeat business of your own, neighborhood residents it was a huge driving factor, in my opinion, for keeping people coming back. So these small mom and pop places, and a lot of them were literally that, they were family owned, and you could see, the family resemblance in the 3 different generations of people that were working there sometimes. And so the bagel place that I would frequently go to, they didn't skimp on the toppings like lox or cream cheese or whatever else. So anyway, if you haven't had a New York bagel, if you're ever there, get it. I'm not saying it's the most, delicious, insane thing in the world, but if you like bagels and you get a chance to try them, they are delicious. Just like cannolis. I've lived in a number of different places in the States, and I don't even ask for cannolis anymore. In a number of different places I've been to, in bakeries. Then I keep in mind, this is in a bakery. Ask them for cannolis, and I've had more, especially in Portland. Portland's a bizarre food place. But anyways, asking for cannolis, and more than once heard the answer, what is that? So, anyway, we got to get moving. We're back to the moped riding perp. A moped riding Manhattan crook was fatally shot when he pulled a gun on an off-duty cop in a botched robbery. He was an illegal migrant involved in 3 other violent thefts minutes earlier, sources tell The Post. And my point was, the bagel and the New York Post with a cup of coffee was was a fantastic way to start the morning. Because New York Post just always had the best headlines, and they would spice up their stories. They were a lot of fun. So, Lahione Soto, 30, of the Dominican Republic, was shot in the chest 3 times by the NYPD officer outside a residential building at West 173rd in Washington Heights late Sunday. Soto, who snuck across the border in El Paso, Texas, June 24, had tattoos all along his chin and a massive rose on his neck, was one of 2 moped-riding criminals, allegedly, who ambushed the off-duty officer, sources said. The accomplice got away, but the migrant and his accomplice carried out 3 other gunpoint robberies in a span of just 13 minutes before the fatal encounter with the cop, according to sources. They began at 9:35 p.m. at the rear of 4040 Broadway when a 27-year-old man had his moped stolen at gunpoint by Soto on another 2-wheeled moped. So now they went from having 1 to 2 mopeds over, immediately. "Get off the bike, or I will shoot you," one of the thugs hissed at the victim. 5 minutes later, the duo robbed a married couple outside 3800 Broadway and made a similar threat, sources said. "Give me your necklace, or I'll kill you." One of the hoods snarled at the 52-year-old wife before snatching her jewelry. The pair then pistol-whipped the woman's husband, smashing him in the head and the knee with the weapon before speeding off, sources said. Now, I pause there because I know exactly where 3800 Broadway is in Manhattan, and right down the street from there is a place called Dallas Barbecue. Now, when I used to live in the city, or in New York City, Dallas Barbecue was kind of like, I don't know if I call it a tourist trap. I don't know if it was that exact location, if they have more than one or not, but I'm almost positive it was that one. I used to go there going back a couple of years. And that was kind of like when family or friends would come in from out of town, and you didn't want to take them to like a real ethnic place, because a lot of times real ethnic food that's made by genuine people, from that area, it's different than the Americanized version. So you would go to like a barbecue place or a kind of mainstream restaurant, so they didn't get too, when someone says they like American, or like Indian food, and they're from Indiana, or, whatever, Ohio, whoever, whatever the Midwestern state is, there's an excellent chance they haven't had actual authentic Indian food. They may not be ready for the spice and the flavor and so forth. So you take them to mainstream places. We used to go to Dallas Barbecue, I wouldn't say all the time, but I went a number of times. The thing I remember the most was they had these massive margaritas and the, pulled pork or whatever else. I just remember the massive margaritas. And the last time I went, I remember it being, I think it was summertime. There was no AC, if I recall, or it was being overwhelmed. It was so hot. Restaurants and stuff are much, much smaller in general in New York City than most people realize. Even though I don't think Dallas was a real small place, but there just isn't the room there, the real estate footprint that you have in other parts of the country. And we were just all pressed in on each other and just sweating to death. I almost passed out. I had one of those giant bowl margaritas or daiquiri or something or other. Somebody else was ordering and buying. So, yeah, almost ready to pass. I was so hot. I was just sweating and trying to eat this, flaming hot pulled pork. So, anyway, we got to get back to the story. I'm not just going on and on here rambling about New York City. Okay, so after they pistol whipped, allegedly, the woman's husband, around 9:50 p.m., several moments later, they approached a 55-year-old man down the block, with one of them again warning, "Give me what you got or I'll shoot you." They took his gold bracelet and a gold chain at gunpoint. Then, that was robbery number 3 inside of 15 minutes or less. They then approached the off-duty cop who was outside of an apartment building and said, "Does Steve live here?" I don't know if they were using that as a ruse or what. Soto then whipped out his gun, prompting the cop to draw his own weapon and punch 3 rounds into the illegal migrant's chest. They performed CPR on the migrant, but he was later pronounced dead in the hospital. The accomplice fled on a moped wearing a black Gap hooded sweatshirt, according to sources. They also recovered a loaded 9mm firearm at the scene. The off-duty cop was treated at a hospital for non-life-threatening injuries, police said. Now, listen, guys, let me tell you something. When he said he walked up and said, "Hey, does Steve live here?" As someone who was nearly mugged multiple times when I was living there, here's the takeaway point for the MOA broadcast when it comes to situational awareness. If someone walks up to you out of nowhere and says, hey, and they just ask some nondescript or, bizarre question or extremely innocuous question, it's time to get the heck out of there. On more than one occasion, I would have people walk up to me and go, hey man, you got the time? And you look around, if you're paying attention, you're aware it doesn't look right, doesn't feel right. And someone, especially if there's a second person standing nearby and like watching you with hawk eyes, get out of there. When you hear something like that, hey, you got the time? Oh, hey man, you know what the weather's like? Or some weird question you wouldn't just walk up and necessarily ask someone. It's time to go and get out of there, because something bad is probably about to happen. And it did right there. That guy got punched out 3 rounds in the chest by this cop. So yeah, wild times. Okay, our next story, and let me get a sip here. The headline comes to us from, oh, this is also New York Post. Trump's D.C. takeover caused violence to plummet 45%. Democratic mayor admits, as residents and business owners say, we feel much more safe. So briefly, I'm not going to have time to go into this whole article. I got too much time left or going already. If you're unaware, if you don't live in the States or whatever else, President Trump, and again, we don't get political, folks. We're not going to support either side or any other side along the way. We just report on the facts, and it's unavoidable that there are political, aspects to certain stories. We're not going to throw support or throw shade, as the kids say these days. We're going to just give you the facts. You do with that what you want. However, some of these stories are pretty funny sometimes, and you can't help but notice the way certain, politicians or whoever act just a little, in my opinion, irrational. You could write a whole book on the way Trump acts, for crying out loud. The things he says and does. You could write a whole book on how you might even use the word insane he sometimes acts and the things he says. So, whatever. I'm with it either way. I like to see something funny and comment on it. But you have to admit, Washington, D.C. is a dangerous city, okay? So he's used the National Guard and other elements in his control to try and bring down the violent crime in Washington, D.C. And according to the newspaper stats and the mayor of D.C., who was initially very opposed, if you recall, when this first got brought up, like, no, this isn't going to work. We don't need the president, blah, blah, blah. They were all against it. Violence has plummeted 45% in like 2 weeks. Okay, that's a huge deal. I don't care who you did or didn't vote for. Who in the right mind would not want to live in a place that had violent crime? Let's say you live there already. Who wouldn't want violent crime to go down 45% in 2 weeks or less? Okay, so many residents and business owners say they feel safer already. We greatly appreciate the urge of officers that enhance what Metro PD, I'm guessing, has been able to do in this city, said D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser in a Wednesday press conference. Now, get a load of this. The difference between this 20-day period of the federal surge and last year represents an 87% reduction in carjackings, Bowser noted. She later put the full stats on her X or Twitter account. Violent crime has fallen by 45% when compared with the same period in 2024. They interviewed several people of all different, political backgrounds and ethnicities and everything else. Everybody they showed on the news that I saw, and I went to several different sites, they were all very happy. And I don't know why they wouldn't be. Forget Donald Trump aspect of it. Think about it like this. If the government is doing what it's supposed to be doing and enforcing the laws that keep you safe, and it brings down crime dramatically, why wouldn't you be happy? So we'll leave it at that. If you're not happy with that, I think you might have to question what your motives are. And that's not a political statement. That is what sane person would like violent crime in a very, very violent city to stay elevated so high. All right, we got to go take a break. When we get back, we're going to get more into the crime stats and we got our MOA preparedness segment coming up and our classic movie spotlight. So don't go anywhere, folks. More Make It Out Alive with Sam Wilson after this.
The businesses you hear on Gold Country Radio proudly support your favorite radio station. Next time you visit one of our partners, consider thanking them for keeping the country classics and community news on the air. Bringing Klamath Falls the educational and entertaining programming that Gold Country Radio provides is what drives our community businesses to support not only this station, but ultimately our listeners. Our sense of community could not be stronger, as together we strive to keep Klamath country. Information about all of Gold Country Radio's partners can be found at goldcountryradio.org. For questions, please call this station at 541-238-6989. Again, that's 541-238-6989. Or email goldcountryradio@gmail.com.
You're listening to the MOA Broadcast with Sam Wilson. Will you make it out alive? All right, folks, and we are back from the break. It is time for more MOA Broadcast with your host, Sam Wilson. Okay, so before the break, we were talking about the violent crime in Washington, D.C. I'm trying to find where I had the numbers. Okay, it's at the end. I'll get to that in just a minute then. The point of this story is it's working. And again, I gave you my word, and I'm going to stick to it. I honor that. We're not going to get political. We're not going to support or derogate or denigrate one political party or ideology over the other. But some of this stuff, guys, as a logical observer, you cannot help but come to any other conclusion than the one you're presented with and left with. And that is, if you increase police presence, whether it's National Guard in conjunction with the police or whatever, and you have a push towards reducing crime, you're going to have better results than just ignoring it and letting things, happen devil may care, so to speak. And that's what was going on. All these cities that were, and again, I'm not going to get overly specific or political, but there were a number of cities that were all getting, having a hissy fit that the president may be bringing in the National Guard or whatever to bring down some of the crime in these out of control cities. Okay, you know what? Let's just look at the numbers. Where did it go? Okay, so for Washington, D.C., in 2024, they had 190 homicides or murders. That's one every 1.92 days. Okay, so basically every 2 days, somebody was getting murdered in Washington, D.C. If we go to 2023, they had 274 homicides, which is apparently a 26-year high. This is supposed to be the city, and that's one homicide every 1.3 days. Okay, that's not even every day and a half, 1.3 days, if my math is correct. It may be wrong. I don't know. I've made mistakes before. But 274 homicides, okay? This is supposed to be the nation's capital. This is where foreign countries, their emissaries, and their leaders come to visit and everything else. Wouldn't you think that a government or whatever would want to put their best foot forward and look the best and the most peaceful and calm and strongest and blah, blah, blah? If you ever read history on the way Washington, D.C. was designed, the city was planned out and designed, it's fascinating. That's exactly how this works. And that's not a political opinion. I learned that in social studies or civics class growing up. Those numbers are crazy. Wait until you listen to Chicago, though. I got to do this one on the computer. Let's see. I had too many things to save to the tablet today. Okay. Murders and shootings. This sounds like this. You can't even believe that these numbers are real in the city of Chicago. And the point of this was Trump's already doing this in D.C., the president. Let's leave Trump's name out of it. I don't want to argue about Trump pro or against or whatever. I don't want to get into that. The president has already been doing this in Washington, D.C. to fantastic effect. A lot of people were interviewed by news sites of both, affiliation, the red and blue. Let's leave it at that. And everybody was like, yes, this is better. We are much happier. We feel much safer. There is so much National Guard and police presence. They have the National Guard members going around picking up trash in parks and on sidewalks. Why is that a bad thing? People are safer. Murder. They went I think they just had a murder the other day, but that broke a 12 or a 14-day stretch of no murders. Now keep in mind, again, last year they had a murder every 1.3 days. I lost my numbers here, but regardless, it was out of control. Yeah, Every in 2024, they had a murder every 1.92 days. So that's almost one every 2 days. They just went 12 or 14, almost 2 weeks without a murder there. How is that bad? Forget your opinions on the political parties or the names or what are the individual people. How is that net effect bad? And the reason I brought this up was because while I was preparing this story, another one came over the wire and saw the story. They're interviewing the mayor of Chicago. This guy's going to have some problems coming up because of there is story after story of his constituents they're having conferences, press conferences, and like town hall meetings. They are upset. Okay, they are very, very mad. And let's see here. Okay, we got everything running. Got to check. I got so many things going simultaneously on the computer and the tablet and so forth, and I'm not a technologically proficient person. They're getting mad at the mayor. People of all demographics and ages and everything. They're upset. So they're interviewing this mayor of Chicago, and they're talking about. He's like, he looked like, frankly, to me, like they're telling him, what's going to happen? What are you going to do if the president brings a National Guard to Chicago and so on and so forth? He looked like he was ready to break down and cry. And it's like, how can you be a logical person, politics aside? Just think of self-preservation. Okay, you don't want to get carjacked. You don't want to get shot. You don't want to get mugged. How can you think that having more law enforcement presence and focusing on enhancing law enforcement can be a bad thing? And this dude was almost ready to cry. And he ended it. Someone said, "What are you going to do?" Because he tried to. Did I get the headline on here? Where'd it go? Here's the Mayor Johnson, the mayor of Chicago. He signed an executive order demanding President Trump stand down on threats to send troops to Chicago, according to WGN. Can you imagine a mayor of a city telling the president of the United States, "Stand down, bud, we got this"? You don't. Do you want to hear the numbers? Look at Chicago. But he was ready to cry. Someone asked him, "What are you going to do when they, if they come here?" And he said, I issue this executive order and they're going to do what I say and I'm stand down, blah, blah. And the reporter's like, "But what are you going to do if they do show up?" And he's like, "I don't take orders from the federal government." And he just stormed off. He looked like an obstreperous child about to get a spanking. It's not going to be good. But here are the numbers, folks. Listen. Okay, if we go to year 2024 in Chicago, this is last year, they had 581 homicides. What was the number for Washington, D.C.? Washington, D.C. is one of the most dangerous cities in the country, and they had 190 murders. Chicago last year had 581. They had 2,815 shootings in 2024 alone. Go to 2023. They had 581 murders in 2024. In 23, they had 621. In 22, 715. In 2021, they had 805 murders and 4,419 shootings. That sounds worse than RoboCop. This is insane. We've talked a number of times about the massive crime level and problems in Chicago. I've got multiple friends and people that I know that live in Chicago. I used to love visiting Chicago. The food there is some of the best in the country, in my opinion. And it's a very beautiful city. It really is. Big and wide streets and in certain areas and stuff. Beautiful. I love going there. But these numbers are insane. Those are bad numbers. There's a train in the background for those even familiar. Why would you not want assistance or if you're able to fix it yourself, do it? And again, we're not going to get political, but it was funny because I saved initially. Okay, so this is the last thing we're going to say, and then we're going to move on from all this political stuff and put it behind us because we don't want to give even the appearance of being political or being non-politically neutral in the MOA broadcast. But if you'll recall, if you be the news, it's no secret to anyone that President Donald Trump and the governor of California, the current governor of California, Newsom, they don't really seem to care for each other. And I think that's putting it mildly. Okay, so when the president first started talking about we're going to use the National Guard and troops and this, that, and the other to bring down crime, Newsom, of course, being one of the biggest states, so to speak, in the country, was one of the first to criticize, "Oh, this is a bad idea. We don't have a crime problem." Blah, blah, blah. Okay, guess what happened? Where did I save it? Did I save the headlines? Oh, so all I'm going to read to you are the headlines that came out like in the last 2 days, since there's been so much massive success with this approach on crime in Washington, D.C. Okay? Here are the headlines. Now, don't forget that as of a week or two or a couple of days ago, the governor in California was talking about this isn't going to work. It's this and that and the other's politically motivated. It's going to be racial and so forth. Here, now all of a sudden, he changed his tune, apparently, whenever things started working out. We go to, let's see, Governor Newsom to ramp up state law enforcement presence in major cities. That's headline number 1. Number 2, Newsom deploys crime suppression teams statewide. And finally, Governor Newsom deploys new teams to fight crime in major California cities. That's not a political jab, folks. It's just a couple of days ago, he was talking about this is no good, blah, blah, blah. It's having massive success in D.C. It looks like they may be going to Chicago, too. All of a sudden, he decides to start kicking butt on crime. And you have to ask yourself, why weren't we doing this all along? I've got a lot of friends and clients and customers in California. They love the state, but the way things have gone, they are very, very unhappy with crime and other things in the city. And I'll leave it at that, the state, and I'll leave it at that. So I guess we're going to see how that plays out for everyone involved. But man, can you imagine living in a city, not a state, where you've got 805 murders? That's over 2 a day. That's over 2 murders a day and 4,419 shootings a year. That was Chicago, 2021. So, whew, okay, we're going to move on. What is next? Oh, okay. Classic movie spot. Let me get a sip here. And I almost forgot, folks. In the beginning of the program, I was talking about the Patreon page and everything else. There, if you go and you decide to become a supporter, you don't have to. This podcast, the audio only version, goes out on Spotify, Apple. It goes out over the radio. You can find it on the website www.gearconvoy.com. You get it for free. We have a Patreon page where if you want to support $1, $5, $10 a month, you can. You do not have to get the wonderful, in my opinion, information in this show. And on top of it, you can find all that info if you go to gearconvoy.com. There's a tab for the MOA Broadcast and the books and everything we have going on. So if you go to the Patreon page, you do not have to donate to get a lot of these pictures that we have of like bacon and Cobra and other little things going on around the shop. A lot of the information there is free too. Primarily, it's the video versions and a few other things that we have to, it's behind a paywall, so to speak. But don't hesitate to go check that out. If you go to Patreon, Patreon, you go there, you can find this under Gear Convoy. Or if you just go to gearconvoy.com, there's a tab at the top. You click on it for the MOA broadcast, and all the links and everything are there. It explains how it works, and you don't have to pay anything. But you can see what Cobra and bacon look like and all of our adventures getting fried chicken in town. So let's move on. What do we got? Okay, our classic movie spotlight. Now, we've done a number of like 60s and 70s action films, and we've had kind of a highlight or a spotlight on Charles Bronson films. I really, really enjoyed the Charles Bronson films of the 60s, 70s, primarily 70s and 80s. Not just because of the action, sort of thing, but they were very minimalist, very reductive. That's probably not the right word. I'll say it another time. But they were very minimalist. They had little, very sparse dialogue, and they just had a focus on letting scenes and everything else do the talking, the action do the talking and facial expressions. And they kind of relied on the viewer to make their own deductions on what's going on. They were a lot of fun. So we did Hard Times, one of my all-time favorite films, where he is a boxer in the Depression, a bare knuckles boxer, street fighter. Good film. Definitely watch it. We did Mr. Majestic, I think, which was last week. That was a very solid film too. I don't think it was quite up there with Hard Time, but a very, very solid, very rewatchable film. And that was based on Elmore Leonard novel. We did that last week, but Elmore Leonard did a ton of good novels and screenplays and so forth. Today, we're going to do The Mechanic, and then we'll move on to somebody else for a while. I think we did some John Wayne. We'll get back to that. I think we'll have a few in the pipeline to get to. And we try and keep all of these movies, or the vast majority of them, are very family friendly. They're PG or PG-13 for most of these films. And you got to remember, back in the 70s, they didn't have a PG-13 rating. So if something didn't qualify to be the very strict PG that it was then, it was automatically R. And some of the R films back then would barely be PG by today. I think the first PG-13 rating came out in 1986 or so, and I think Red Dawn was the first movie to get that rating. So prior to that, it was either PG or R. So a lot of films they're not nearly as bad as they may sound. Use your own judgment, and we'll move on. So The Mechanic, I'll read the brief synopsis here. Done in 1972, The Mechanic is a sleek, psychological action thriller starring Charles Bronson as Arthur Bishop, a seasoned solitary hitman known for his precision and untraceable skills. Living a life of meticulous routines and emotional detachment, Bishop, that's Bronson, takes on a new apprentice, Steve McKenna, who is played by Jan Michael Vincent. Probably one of his best roles, in my opinion. He really kills it. This role was tailor-made for Jan Michael Vincent. Couldn't have written a better fit or better role or part for him, especially playing opposite Bronson. The two had really, really good. It was very, low-key, but excellent chemistry. So that added a big deal to it. He is, Jan Michael Vincent, is a brash and ambitious young man who wants to learn the trade of being a hitman. So Bronson trains Jan Michael Vincent in the deadly art of assassination, and it culminates, of course, I want to give the plot away, but I like the way they put it. With its minimalist dialogue, intense atmosphere, and cold efficiency, the film offers a chilling look at the psyche of a contract killer. Now, this was a Michael Winner film. Bronson and Michael Winner, they collaborated on a number of films. A lot of them were good. There were a couple that were, whatever, but they were a good combo. And if you put Bronson in the right, excuse me, hang on one second. Okay. If you put Bronson in the right role, like a lot of actors, he was fantastic. In that role, I don't know there was a better actor for that particular role at that time in Hollywood. But you put him in the wrong role, it's going to be a nightmare. And so he and Michael Winner, they were a very, very good team. They did a number of films together. But The Mechanic is really good. It doesn't explain every single little thing. It relies on the viewer to make a few deductions and figure a few things out as you go. Great film, The Mechanic. This is not the sequels. I haven't seen them. In general, I don't like remakes. They just they focus on all the wrong things and they get all the right things wrong. So, but the 1972 version with Charles Bronson, The Mechanic, has been around a long time. You've probably heard of it. If not, watch it. In my opinion, fantastic film. I have no idea what the actual rating on it is. I would rate it PG. I mean, I don't think there was any kind of like nudity. That was very, very minimal, harsh language. If any of the violence is very tame, it would easily be a PG film and a lot of fun. And there's a good psychological edge to it too. So let's see, where are we at in time here? Okay, we got to go. Let's move on to, let's do the MOA preparedness segment. Today we're going to do power backup and water purification. Now, this is honestly, even though I like all the news stories and the other fun stuff, this is really why I started the show, is to talk about preparedness, not in like the 1970s survivalist, stockpiling weapons and ammunition type preparedness and survivalism. It's being prepared for essentially a bad day that may turn into a bad 2 weeks, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's, whatever it is that disrupts your electricity, your water, your pipeline to supplies. Excuse me. So ask yourself a question. If you woke up, and I've done this a number of times on the show, but it's a really good question. It's the easiest way to do this, and it's always applicable. If you woke up in the morning and the power was out, and come to find out it's going to wind up being out for the next day, to the next week, to the next 2 weeks, what would you do? Would you have any recourse? And then, what happened if you turned the water on and no water came out? Or, extra twist, what if you turn the water on, the water works, but the power is out, and you don't know that there's a boil water effect in place? You see how these things, they all kind of run hand in hand? You can't just prepare for one thing. You can't just stockpile food or weapons or ammunition or whatever it is that you like to focus on. I don't get into guns a whole lot on the show because there's tons of shows that do that. And the gun guys, no offense, many of them are my friends and collaborators and so forth. They will talk endlessly about guns, just like the knife guys will talk endlessly about knives and ignore in my opinion, the real applicable part, the pragmatic part of the issue with it, which is how are you going to use them and what are the other aspects of survival. So let's go. Let me quit talking here. All right, I've got this one saved on the internet. Let me pull this up. Downloading things to your tablet is a little bit different than having printed. Okay, here we go. So I've got some talking points here that I put into a little small chart, and I'm going to try and just going to go through this. All I want to do is, and I don't even sell this stuff. I don't sell power, banks and backup stuff. I don't sell water purification stuff. I'm not trying to sell you anything. Think about what situation you're in, especially if you're the head of a household, male or female, doesn't matter. If you're the head of a household, what would you do if your family, however big or small, looks to you to take care of these things in a bad situation? Have you prepared to make it out alive? Okay, we go to energy, independence, and backup power. Now, these are all with a shelter-in-place focus. Believe me, almost any other scenario is going to be a nightmare. You don't want to pack up all your crap in your backpack or your vehicle and have to leave. By far, in most cases, the best thing is going to be probably to shelter in place as far as having a best outcome. Our power grid here can be very vulnerable despite the fact that it's very good. Okay, power outages are on the rise due to storms, cyber threats, and grid strain. The average American outage lasts 4 to 5 hours. That's no big deal. You can do that standing on your head. But major events, like we talked about last week, in Texas, in North Carolina, we had wildfires. There we had coast to coast. We listed a bunch of different natural disasters. They can go days or weeks. What are you going to do if you go beyond 4 or 5 hours? Have you ever had to deal with going 24, 48, 72, 96 hours or more without power? What are you going to do, head of the household? What are you going to do? Backup strategy. Okay, now, power banks. These are really, really good tools. If you go to Amazon or wherever and you search a power bank, you're going to get a billion different results. But these are basically large battery packs that are the size of anywhere from like a size of a couple of encyclopedias stacked on top of each other to the size of a computer tower or whatever else. And they can power a lot of different things. I love them. I've got a couple of them. They work very, very good. They're not going to do so well for things that have a high draw, like a coffee maker or a heater. But for doing things like charging phones, running your Wi-Fi, if you have like Starlink or whatever else, and other small electrics, they do fantastic. And you can get them solar charged. So do you have a couple of good brands? There's Jackery, I have an EcoFlow unit. I love it. The thing I like about the EcoFlow, the others may do the same thing, but it charges very quickly. I can plug it in, and if it's almost dead or even fully dead, it's a full charge in about an hour, which is fantastic. And I can run cell phones and computers and a number of things off of it for hours, if not days, with that unit. So that's one thing. Let's see. Gas or dual fuel generator. Let's see, what are we doing on time here? Okay, we're okay. We got about 3 minutes left for that segment. Your generators. The generator I have runs on, I think, natural gas, propane, or gasoline. Now, a lot of people have never needed a generator. They may not, especially if you live in an apartment. That may kind of complicate things. But the point is, have you thought about this? What are you going to do in the event of a power outage? Do you have any kind of plan at all? What if you have to boil water, but you have no means to do so? And you don't have any water storage. We're going to get that in a minute. Okay, then there's solar chargers. I need to get a solar thing, a charging unit for my battery packs, the battery units or whatever it's called, the station. I don't have that as of yet, so that's something I got to work on. Some of them are really good. You need to do some research, though. Do yourself a favor. If you're going to buy a battery, unit, what's it called again? The portable battery station or power bank. That's what I call it, power bank. Do yourself a favor and do some research and get yourself a system. Don't try and just pick the cheapest unit and then get the cheapest, wire set up for it and then the cheapest solar chargers. Buy, what's going to work best based on others' experience. Otherwise, you're going to wind up wasting a lot of time and money and have to go back and buy the original thing anyway. So that's that. Let's get into water purification and storage. Do you have any means? I'm talking to you, head of household. Male, female, doesn't matter. Do you have any backup water storage in your house right now? The average American does not. The minute that faucet dies, they have nothing. Okay, great. Let's say you got a couple of water bottles in the refrigerator. Let's say you've got 2-3 kids. how long is that going to last you? The rule of thumb to go by is about a gallon per day per person. That covers consumption of water and also hygiene and so forth. You can get by on a lot less than that, but do you have anywhere close to that for 2 weeks for every single member of your family and your pets? If not, what are you going to do about that? And if you do, what if it goes beyond 2 weeks and the stores are empty and they're raided out and everything? We talked about World War Z a number of times. That's what it's going to look like. People are going to hit the stores like a bum rush, like gangbusters, and it's going to be a serious problem. Then what are your options beyond whatever water level you've got of storage? Once you exhaust that, and you will if it goes on long enough, what are your options? Can you boil water? Do you have chemical treatment options? Do you have filtration options? I have both. For me personally, I tend to prefer boiling. Boiling is like the gold standard. I've read books and spoken with people that boiled water in some of the nastiest parts of the world. And 1 minute rolling boil, they've drank some water that is absolutely disgusting. So that should be more than enough for contaminated tap water. But again, do your research for your area. Do you have the means to boil water? Do you have chemical purification? What about filtration? Do you have any method at all to get you beyond what your current water supply is? If not, that's something to think about. And folks, here's the thing about emergencies. They don't always come with a warning. Sometimes, like that last flood they had in Texas, they had like an hour. They realized things were starting to get out of control, and an hour or less later, it was gone. I mean, the town was buried. Multiple deaths and fatalities, power, water, everything was out. It was a disaster. So keep that in mind. Don't wait to prepare until it's too late. If you do, you may not make it out alive. Okay, folks, that's going to cover that. We'll dig deeper into that next week and get into it. We'll try and make that a running theme. Really, preparedness is not that difficult. It's pretty simple, honestly. It's making sure you have the things you absolutely need to get by for a couple of days. Minimum, in my opinion, is 2 weeks. And we talked about it last week, and we got to move forward. But do yourself a favor. Every once in a while, it may not be the easiest thing to do. Make a family game out of it or like an event and see if you can go 24 hours or a full, 12-hour or 14-hour daylight day of no power at all and see how you get by. Preparing meals, cleaning up, everything else. And that will show you the weakness, the holes in your game. Then you can focus on those. Okay, let me get a sip. All right, folks, you may have guessed it. Now we go to Florida. I'm going to read you the headline and then we'll jump right in. This is according to the Miami Herald. A Keys man paid $900 for sex, but the prostitute and her pimp wanted more, cops say. A Key West man who paid a prostitute $900 for, let's say, 3 hours of adult fun time in one afternoon was attacked and robbed inside his own home by the prostitute and her pimp, police say. Whitney Nicole Mullins, 24, and Jason Robinson, 35, both of Deltona, were arrested on charges of home invasion with a weapon and false imprisonment for the attack on the 800 block of White Street. The victim told the police he had searched online for an escort service and located a woman named Ginger. You can't make this up. On a website for quote-unquote secret benefits. He ordered the escort online and who charged him $300 an hour. He twice again called secret benefits to request Ginger to return to his home. After the final visit at about 6 p.m., the victim was in the kitchen when there was a knock at the door. When the homeowner, the victim, answered it, Ginger and her pimp allegedly walked in demanding cash from the customer, according to reports. According to police, when the victim said he had already paid for the services, the pimp punched him in the face and ordered him to search his bedroom and demanded he give him his PIN number for his credit card. So while Ginger's searching for credit card and PIN numbers, they made the man get into a closet, which they then barricaded shut with furniture and then ransacked his place and stole the keys to his home, his scooter, and his truck, along with his wallet, power tools, watch, cell phone. a blue vodka bottle filled with coins. They arrived at the home to find the victim beaten up with a swollen face and a bleeding nose. They tracked down the suspects, and they were arrested. And I can't get into all this. Both Ginger and the pimp were taken to Stock Island Detention Center, where they remained. With Ginger, the pimp's bond is $250,000, and the Ginger's bond is $200,000. When they were asked why the man who engaged in prostitution wasn't arrested, they were told the detectives opted to address the crimes in order of severity. So the victim wasn't arrested at that time, but guess what? The victim, allegedly Michael Terry Borovic, has since been charged with solicitation, according to the Miami Herald. Ginger and the pimp had trouble raising their bond and are still in custody as of the time of the article. All right, folks, that's going to do it. Remember, don't wait to make sure you're prepared. If you wait, it may be too late. If you don't make it out alive, you don't make it out at all. Stay safe out there, folks.